Welcome to Legacy Coach K, where we're going to be exploring the career of Mike Krzyzewski through the eyes of his former players. We're going to begin at the beginning, the 1980s. And with us to explore those early years, we have Johnny Dawkins, a member of the 86 Duke class, which was Coach K's first Final Four team, and has now been a head coach since 2008. And Jay Bilas, another member of that 86 team, and now ESPN's premier college basketball analyst. Jay, when you arrived on campus in the fall of 1982, what were your initial impressions of Coach K?
I had never heard of Coach K. I didn't know his name when Duke started recruiting me. And the truth is, the only reason I knew Duke at all growing up in Los Angeles was your Final Four team in 1978. I didn't really know where Duke was, and I couldn't have found it on a map. But I think the thing that set Coach K apart for me was I trusted him right away. And that wasn't true of a lot of the coaches that recruited me. It was true for a few, but not all of them. Some of them came across like they were trying to sell you a used car. And Coach K was very genuine the whole time and got to know more than just the basketball side. And set himself apart with how he recruited us, I think more so than just, that he recruited us.
You guys had a really tough freshman year. Nowadays, half the team would have hit the transfer portal, but how did Coach K hold you guys together and get you to believe good things would come?
Well, for me, it was a challenging time. I mean, I had never lost like that probably since I was in elementary school. So that was real difficult, I think, for me to handle. But it was difficult for our teammates to handle, too. You 11 and 17, and he recruited a bunch of players that had won wherever they've been. So everybody on the team had success in high school. Now, you're making a big jump, of course, as you know, from high school to college. But having had that success, I think everybody was a little knocked back. And it was a real challenging time. I think we all internally struggled. I mean, externally, I think if you look around, it was difficult in the community. Because, used to having a story program coming off of what you guys had done in the 70s and 78 going to the Final Four, made it very difficult. And so I think using the fact that we had all had success, I think we're all very competitive people. I think that was kind of the start of turning it around. And Coach being who he was, I mean, nobody's going to be more passionate about winning and not just winning on the court, but in life. And so he definitely wasn't going to have us going in the wrong direction. So he kept us together, continually talking with us. It helped strengthen us and our belief in ourselves and our team.
Yeah, our freshman year was far from easy. There were so many difficulties to it. But I don't think any of us ever lost belief in Coach K. The one thing I do remember is we questioned the belief of the university and the supporters around it because there was so much talk about whether Coach K was going to get fired. The only time I remember transferring coming up was if they fire him, I'm out of here. I heard people say that. I said it. If they fire him, I'm out of here. I'm not staying. That kind of stuff. But he was not always easy. In the early years because we had to establish a tougher culture maybe, but it was never to the point where we didn't believe in what we were being told and then where we didn't believe in one another. If you saw Mark Allery or Johnny Dawkins or David Henderson play, who's going to walk away from that? Like nobody was going to walk away from. We weren't going to walk away from each other. I know that.
Coaches motivate in different ways, some through fear, others through threat of playing time. Are there any particular stories you recall in different ways that Coach K would motivate you guys and not just yourself, the whole team?
The thing I've always admired about Coach is he just finds the buttons to push for you to maximize who you are as a player. And it's different for every guy. So for me, I remember, my last year we're playing for a championship in the ACC, and I have to get ready to guard Mark Price. And so his challenge for me was that, I think you may be scared to guard him. This is what he says to me during before the game. And of course, that's going to motivate you, of course, as a competitor. So, I'll never forget that. But, he's going to push your buttons and find out what's going to get you to be at your best. And I've always admired him for that. At the time, as a young player, you don't really understand it as much as you do now as you're coaching and you're maturing, but you know, it was a great motivating factor for us. You know, we ended up having success. We won the game and ended up winning the ACC. So it's always a special memory, and I always think about him, you know, because of that.
It took me a while, honestly, to get used to the amount of yelling. And it wasn't just negative yelling. He would yell positive stuff too, but the negative yelling, you know, stuck with you for a while. Because I'd never heard that kind of volume, you know, especially directed at me. So that took a while to be able to process it in a positive way. Our freshman year, we played Louisville in Cameron, and you know, Louisville, they were the doctors of dunk back then, and they had a great team. They wound up going to the Final Four in '83 and played Houston in that unbelievable dunk fest that they had. We had lost a few games, and you know, things weren't heading in a great direction for us. And before the game, before he came up to speak to us, give us our final speech, all of a sudden the lights went out. And I don't know what Johnny thought, but I was thinking, oh, geez, you know, what else is going to go wrong? What, did we not pay the light bill? And we see this flickering light coming from down the hallway into our tiny locker room, and it was him holding a candle in front of his face. And so all you could really see was his face kind of hovering in the darkness. And then he said, you know, I came not to praise Louisville, but to bury them, and blew the candle out. So all the guys jump up and we're screaming and yelling. We went out and played a great first half, and then they beat the crap out of us in the second half. But I always kind of remembered that man, this guy will do anything to get us going.
You both returned to Duke as assistant coaches. You know, Johnny, you were in the late 90s after a fantastic 9-year career in the NBA, and Jay, you came back a couple years, like in 1990, I think you were cast as the good alien in Dolph Lundgren's film, I Come in Peace. So, Johnny,
yeah, that was one of the many things I did.
Johnny, what made you come back home to Duke to begin your coaching career?
You know, it's an interesting story. I wasn't really coming back to coach. You know, I've always loved the Durham and North Carolina area, and so I always wanted to live there. You know, ever since I went to school, so I was going back there. And I wanted to get into sport administration. You know, really I wanted to be an athletic director. That was kind of my goal. And it just so happened Coach Amaker, you know, who was the assistant at the time, took the head coaching job at Seton Hall. So it opened up a position. And I just vividly remember Coach just walking into my office where I was sitting and just, hey, you know, you ever think about coaching? And I'm thinking to myself, well, I guess I'm coaching now. I thought I wanted to be an AD, but I guess I'm a coach now. So I, you know, and I really appreciate him doing that, because I didn't realize how much I would enjoy what I do, how much I would enjoy the mentoring of the young people I get a chance to work with on and off the court. And it's been great for me. I mean, I'm so happy that he gave me that opportunity. You know, I can't thank him enough for it.
That's a great story. Did not know that that's how you came back to Duke. I don't know how many viewers of this show will know that. That's a very cool story. Jay, I assume Hollywood said don't come back, and you said you did some other things, but you came back to Duke and went to law school as I guess an graduate assistant coach?
Yeah, and that was similar to Johnny. That was Coach K's idea. And he called me and said, "Hey, I'd like you to consider this graduate assistant position." And I had applied to Duke Law School, and so I think Coach K had it all kind of worked out in his mind as how he wanted to go. He wanted me to be on his staff as a grad assistant, and then to do law school at the same time. And back then, the law school was not in favor of that. They really pushed back against me doing that. And Coach K kind of fought for me to make it happen. And I thought he had told me, it was going to be a difficult challenge because of the time commitment. And he had said, look, if you can't handle it, you know, you can just quit. And I thought, I wasn't sure, did he mean quit law school or quit coaching? What was I going to be quitting? But I figured I could handle it, and did. And but it was a great way for me to not only get my law degree, but to really decide whether I wanted to pursue coaching. And when my wife and I got married, we decided it probably wasn't the best path for us given the other opportunities I had. So I decided not to go after that full bore because of our family situation. But it was great for me to, I probably learned more about basketball getting behind the curtain with him for those 3 years than I did in all the years prior to that.
Guys, that wraps up our first segment. We'll be back with more of Legacy Coach K in just a moment.
All the players that played for you throughout your career, we appreciate you, not just as our coach, but as a mentor, as a person that's been there for us all the time. So thank you for everything.
Welcome back to Legacy Coach K, the 80s. Everybody has seen your documentary about the 86 team. The stories were great around the table there. I think it was at the Washington Duke, but did any of your stories hit the cutting room floor? Is there one story from each of you that you could share that hasn't been heard before?
Hasn't been heard before. I mean, it maybe there are cutting room floor stories, I'm sure, that we couldn't tell or sworn to secrecy on, because as you know, Kenny, on every team there are things that happen that you don't want to let anybody know. But for me, like Coach K, the one thing that I don't think he gets enough credit for, people might be surprised, is he's ridiculously funny. And sometimes he's funny without meaning to be. But for me, like the lighter moments were my favorites. We had so many intense moments that are at the forefront, but the lighter moments are the most fun for me. And we had a team meeting one time, and he could be pretty intense in these meetings. And he had talked about the importance of attention to detail. That we had to have amazing attention to detail, and we had to be tough enough to hold each other accountable, to tell each other the tough things, that we weren't going to let anything go, no matter how small it was. And then after kind of giving us the what for about all that, he said, now here are the things that we need to do out on the basketball court to get better. And the number one thing he wrote on the little whiteboard was rebound, but he spelled it REBOUB. And so a couple guys in the meeting room were looking at one another going, do you think he wants us to point that out? Attention to detail and tell each other tough things. Are we supposed to point that out? And I thought, well, maybe you do it. I'm not doing it. And so when we got back out on the floor for practice, every time a shot went up, a few of us smartasses were going, rebound! And he finally caught on. And kind of got mad about, oh, that's real funny. See if it's funny tomorrow, when this guy's kicking your ass or whatever. But it was those kind of things
that's the kind of story we're
like
looking for, Jay. That's the perfect story we're looking for. Johnny, anything from you on that?
No, Jay summed it up well. Probably one of the funnier ones for me was when we were playing and we were practicing, and Coach, he has this thing where, we weren't practicing to a level that we needed to. And so he wanted to kind of, send a message. So he kicked us out of the practice. And so in doing so, when he kicked us out of the practice, you guys get out, you guys aren't ready to practice. But when he kicked us out, some of the younger guys, I can remember Coach Amaker, for example, Tommy Amaker, he's looking to go get the basketball. And he's like, you know what, we're not getting any basketballs. We're done for the day. Coach has just kicked us out. So we're all looking around and seeing the young guys look like they were in shock because, we actually probably the first time in our lifetime or in his lifetime, we probably been thrown out of practice. But we had gone through it the year before, so we kind of knew, like, okay, all right, here it comes. It's not going well. We probably will get booted. And when it happened, he was still collecting the ball, as I mentioned before, wanted to set it back up. Like, hey, you can leave that ball. It can roll outside for all we care. We're done anyway. So that was probably one of the funnier moments for me, watching the younger guys kind of in shock when we got kicked out of the practice.
Before we wrap up, there's certainly been a lot written, and there'll be a ton more written about Coach K's legacy. But from a former player standpoint, what do you think his legacy is?
I think he'll go down as the greatest college coach ever. I think what he's done in his era, with all the challenges that you face, the way the game has changed over the last 3 or 4 decades, and his ability to kind of evolve as the game has evolved has been amazing. I think when people look back on him, they're going to really miss him and realize just how special he was in our game for the last 4 decades. I don't think people realize it because he's still here now coaching. But when he's gone, I think people are going to realize just the character of the man, what he represented, for our game. I think all those things will come to light even more in his absence, and he'll be missed.
Thank you. Jay, what do you think?
I think Coach K's legacy is multifaceted. It goes so far beyond basketball. He's not only been in my judgment, the greatest college coach ever. And look, I realize I grew up in Los Angeles. I realize John Wooden has 10 national championships, but Coach K did it for 40 plus years at the highest level and did it all on television. I mean, it's a remarkable achievement, but he also had a profound effect on international basketball, coaching so many USA basketball teams, whether it was pre-professional involvement or when he coached the Olympic team for those 3 Olympics. And then the number of not only players, but coaches that he's influenced. And it doesn't just mean his stable of coaches and his coaching tree, but he's been such a thoughtful member of the basketball community for so many decades that, Bob Knight said this about Henry Iba, but I think it applies to Coach K, that of all the shadows cast in the game, his is the longest. And I really believe that to be true.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Johnny. Great show. And when we come back, there'll be another member of the 80s joining us on Legacy, Coach K.
My message to Coach K is first, thank you, for everything you've done for me, my family, the position you were able to put me in, helping me grow as a man on and off the court, and just everything you've done, not only for me, but for all the other kids who have came through Duke University. So, thank you, and hope your retirement goes well.
Welcome back to Legacy, Coach K, the 80s edition. Next up from Coach's first decade at Duke is the one, the only, Alaa Abdelnaby. Welcome, my brother from another mother.
Good to be with you, Doggy. How are you? Other people know you as Kenny Dennard, but I know you as Doggy.
You were an All-American, a McDonald's All-American in high school, so everyone was after you. Everybody was chasing you up in New Jersey. What did Coach K do during the recruiting process to attract you to come to Duke?
A lot of coaches, as you know, they make promises. They're telling you about what life is going to be like for you when you get on campus. I've got a starting spot for you. I've got 30 minutes for you. Whatever the case may be, Coach never said anything like that. He talked about opportunities, and if I worked hard, I could take advantage of them. But he was never promising me anything. And I appreciated that because later on, when I became a player, I didn't want him going out recruiting Christian Laettner and promising my minutes away from me. I wanted Christian to have to come in and earn it as well. And I think that was the thing that stood out to me more than anything else, was there was no promises made except for promises for potential opportunities.
Coaches motivate in different ways, and each team's different, and each year is a little different. But how did Coach K motivate you and your teammates over your 4 years?
Wow, in so many different ways. I think the biggest lesson I got from him, Kenny, is that you have to bring it every day. That's what life's about. So I remember walks across the parking lot to Cameron on days of practice when you don't think like you've got it, or you don't feel like you're up to 100%. That didn't matter. Once you walked onto that floor, he wasn't interested in all those excuses. He wasn't interested in what held you back during the morning or the afternoon. It was about performing for those 2 hours. I could do anything for 2 hours, no matter what my frame of mind is or how my body is, because he's conditioned you for that. So that to me is the lesson the biggest lesson that I carry with me, is life's about bringing it every day. And for me, there were days when you didn't think you had it, but you still learned to bring it. And those are the kind of things you grow from, learning how to be better each and every day. He raised that bar and made you meet it.
We're asking everybody their favorite Coach K stories from when you were at Duke. And everybody's had some great ones. Can you share anything that we put on air?
Absolutely. I've got a really good one. We were playing Virginia my senior year at Charlottesville. Always a tough place to play. There was always a little bit more a sense of urgency when we played Virginia. And we wound up losing. It was a 9 o'clock game, so the game was over around 11:30. And as you remember, we used to drive back to Charlottesville because it was so close. There was no point in flying. So by the time we get home, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock. And Coach comes to the back of the bus, and his usual routine would be he would tell us what the next day's schedule would be. And it would basically finish with dressed and ready at 2:30, knowing that we would have to go to class in the morning and then come back for practice at 2:30. Well, he comes back to the back of the bus, and Cameron's lights are already lit up. And again, it's 3:30 in the morning. Those lights are never on as we pull up. And he comes to the back of the bus, and he says, dressed and ready in 15 minutes. And I remember thinking, we got to practice right now. This man isn't joking. And I remember looking, I had the box score in my hand still because they hand out the sheets to us. I played 37 minutes. So I didn't know how much more I had left in the tank for what he was planning. And we went out there, and he was mad about our turnovers. So we basically just played 5-on-5. And whenever anybody stole the ball, everybody had to run. When anybody made a turnover, everybody had to run. He just basically wanted to get some of that frustration out of him and out of us. So, yeah, we ran up and down for about a half hour, 45 minutes at 4 o'clock in the morning for practice. But Coach went that extra mile to prepare you, to have a picture in your mind of what was coming. You couldn't have that picture without him guiding you. And I remember sitting down with him, those exit interviews that he has at the end of every year, and him challenging me at the end of my junior year. And I remember just like being angry, saying, you know, no. I've got more in me, and I'm going to show you. My senior year wound up being a pretty good senior year, but a lot of that has to do with, again, him pushing you, him preparing you, him raising the bar, and you being ready for it.
Thanks, Alaa, man. This has been a perfect way to wrap up the 80s.
Love you, brother.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you all for watching Legacy Coach K.